Hush, fellow of the crowd. Alright, so is everybody ready for lunch? Anybody hungry? Is everybody ready for aviation challenge? Alright, now my introducers coming up on stage now.
Alright, so our next speaker was an Alabama Supreme Court Justice for 12 years. He enjoys cross-country skiing and he just built a work shed.
3 words that describe him are Christian, judge, and a teacher. He is currently a professor at Belmont University. Please welcome to the stage, Justice Harold C.
You're welcome to the stage. I'm actually down here, but I hope that'll be all right. Mark Twain made the comment that man is the noblest creation of God. He paused for a second and then said, I wonder who figured that out. Of course, his point is some man figured that out, right? I assume when he said man, he was thinking about mankind, but I imagine he also really thought of that in terms of men. And I would guess if you ask a woman if man is the noblest creation of God, she would say, well, if you think so, you haven't dated the guys I've been dating. And I would think, you know, if you were to ask a horse would say, well, the horse is or a cat. Certainly, right? Would say a cat is the noblest creation of God. So we may have a little bit of dispute on that, but then aren't we the most complex? Well, I happened to read an article, and it turns out that corn is genetically, now that we know about DNA, is genetically far more complex than we are. So we don't have that. Well, maybe we're the most intelligent, right? But then if that has something to do with brain capacity, whales have much bigger brains than we do, right? And Neanderthal man, you know, the phrase you use when you talk about somebody, he's a Neanderthal, right? They had bigger brains than we do. But we are kind of clever. Let me, I read another article, and it had to do with an experiment involving crows. And what they did is they had food for the crows, and they would put it, and they'd have a bunch of little containers, and there'd be a cover over the container, so they couldn't see it so they couldn't see the food from the air. And they'd put dots on the tops of those containers, those covers. And they would then put the corn or the food under one of those containers, and they'd put a single dot on that one. The others would have multiple dots. And the crows would, after they learned, would fly straight to the one with the single dot. Tried it with 2. They got all the way up to 9. And these are randomly placed, so it's not in order. You know, it's not like on a domino. It's just 9 dots. And they crows could recognize 9 dots and fly to that container. I thought about that, and you know, you get to be I gotta be careful. You get to be my age, and you take some pills every morning, right? The people in the back row there, yeah, and in order, just because we aren't smart enough to know which pills we're supposed to take, yeah. So you get one of these little containers, right? You've seen it when you visited your great-grandparents. All right, and you got a week's worth in there. So there's 7 little containers. And then you put pills in each of those. Well, at the end of the week, it's empty. Well, it's time to refill it, right? And so I'd take, you know, the multivitamins and stuff like that, and I'd just pour some out in my hand, and I'd say, is that 8? Because, you know, 1 for each day, and then 1 for today. And I'd say, is that 8? Yeah, about, right? It might be 7, might be 9. A crow knows 9. Look, oh, that's 9. I don't. So I gotta wonder, and what I'm really talking about here is how we learn and how we figure things out. But as I say, we're kind of clever. We figure out ways to figure things out. And let me do this. Let's say you 4 go to lunch together. Now I wrote some names down. This isn't going to work out. Alice, Bob, Cal, and Debbie. So, okay. But anyway, you know why I picked Alice, Bob, Cal, and Debbie, right? A, B, C, D. Yeah. Okay. So we've got so Alice, Bob, Cal, and Debbie here go to lunch together. And Alice orders the Caesar salad, added chicken, and water. Bob orders the hamburger, fries, sweet tea, and apple pie. Cal orders 2 hot dogs, a side salad, and a Coke. Debbie orders the BLT, coffee, and the key lime pie. Okay? So that's what they order. And then at the end, the server gives them a ticket, with all the food on it. Said, can you give us separate tickets? They said, no, we don't do that. And so Alice says, okay, I'll pay for it all, and then you can pay me back. All right? So here's the ticket. It says hamburger, $3. 2 hot dogs at $2 each, $4. BLT, $3. Caesar salad, $4, added chicken, another $1. Fries, $1. Side salad, $1. Apple pie, $2.50. Key lime pie, $2.50. Sweet tea, $1 1/4. Coke, $1 1/4. Coffee, $1. Tax, $2.04. Total cost, $27.54. So how much does Bob owe Alice? How much does Cal owe Alice? And how much does Debbie owe Alice? How much for? Okay. How much does Alice have to pay herself? Huh? Oh yeah, but I mean, have to not get reimbursed for it. We don't know, do we? No. And if I showed that to you, you couldn't. There's all the prices. All right, you see all those prices? Okay, so how much does Bob owe? Oh, you could figure it. How would you figure it out? You divide by. All right, one says divide by 4. Yeah, problem with that. Somebody's getting ripped off. You've done that, haven't you? And it's always the person who orders the extra stuff who says, "Oh, let's just divide it by 4." Right? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So if you want to know how much, what are you going to do? Yeah. Like a rough total. Okay, well, he says, okay, you're going to, but when he says total it all up, you mean, what did each person have? Okay, that's what we'll do, right? Because we aren't smart enough to just look at it and know the answer, are we? We're not that smart, right? But what we'll do is, we'll write down, well, let's see here. Alice had the Caesar salad and the added chicken, and the Caesar salad is $4, the added chicken's another $1. She had water, there's no charge for the water. Okay, so now we've got $5 there, right? And so what we'll do is we'll do this for each person, and then we'll add those up, right? What we're doing here is creating what they call an algorithm. You heard algorithm? Yeah, this series of steps, right? And so, step 1, we'll list the food, and step 2, we'll total up those prices. Okay, and so we get that all done. We find Alice $5, Bob $7.75, Cal $6.25, Debbie $6.50. But that only totals $25.50, not $27.54, because the tax. Well, how much of the tax does each person owe? Yeah? Okay, one way we could do it is we could multiply it if we know what the percent is. If we don't know what the percent is, what do we do? Pardon? Yeah, how? Okay, go ahead. Okay, or we could do it the reverse way around. We could look at the proportion of the total price as exclusive of the tax. What proportion of it does each have, and multiply that by the total amount of the tax, which is mathematically the same thing you're talking. Okay, so we could go through these steps in order to do that, and it's a way that where am I here? Yeah, it's a way that we divide stuff up so that we can figure it out. And we do that in general when we try to learn stuff, don't we? For example, first day of class, first day of school. All right, you all arrive and they give you your schedule. It's one class. It goes from 8 until 3:30 or whatever time you get out, with half an hour out for lunch, but just one class. Well, the world works that way, right? I mean, the world isn't divided up, right? I mean, the world isn't divided between, what am I trying? Geology and climatology and stuff. I mean, it rains on the ground, right? This stuff's mixed up. So we're going to teach you that way. And so you get in, you sit down in the classroom, all of your teachers line up on the stage, and they all start talking at the same time, telling you about their subject. Going to learn that way? No. What we have to do is find a way to divide this stuff up and to talk about it. And then, of course, after that's done, you're going to have to put it back together, aren't you? Right? I worked, when I was in college, I worked as a sheet metal worker. And we had a problem. We were on a job. I knew about sheet metal stuff, and we were going to run ductwork. And we had some fittings. And we're get down to the final fittings, and the folks are looking at it, can't figure out, well, how we've got to finish from here to here, and we have to, get around in this way, and I don't know that we got enough stuff here to make it fit. And one of them turned to me and said, well, you're a college guy. You know how blue-collar workers are about college guys, right? Okay, so you're a college guy. You figure it out. Well, fortunately, I had a math major. I dual major, but one of them was math, and so it was really a relatively simple geometry problem. If you know something about sheet metal and ductwork, and you know something about geometry, and you can put them together. Right? Because geometry didn't, in my geometry class, my professor did not mention ductwork. Not one. Right? And for that matter, on the job, this is the first time geometry ever came up. Right? But you got to put it together. Well, I want to talk about two topics. And we'll see some relationship between them. There are loads of topics out there, aren't there? I mean, there's astrophysics, and I mean, you've got to know about how the planets are going and the moon and all of that stuff. There's geology, tectonic plates, and all of that. This all impacts us. We're part of this world. I suppose if we use the phrase broadly, it's all kind of ecology, isn't it? Now, when I say that, what I mean is a lot of things interacting. One of the things that worries me a little is most folks who label themselves ecologists seem to think that ecology involves everything except us, right? Like we're a plague. The planet is just fine. It's a fine ecological setup, but then somehow we're a parasite that got landed here and is destroying things. But in fact, we're part of this, aren't we? We came up from the dirt, right? Yeah. And just like the forest affects the rest of the world, and the rest of the world affects the forest. Right? We affect the rest of the world, and the rest of the world affects us. We're all in, we're in this whole bundle. But the two things I want to talk about are we would normally call government or politics and the market or economics. Right? These are two things it's my job. Right? I'm sent here. I'm called here to do that. Right? To talk about these two topics and to talk a little about the relationship of the two. And you've been studying things about government, right, and the Constitution, and things about the market. And, all right, well, we're going to talk about both of those, and we're going to talk a little bit about how these two are interrelated. Okay, so when I talk about the economy or the market, what I'm talking about is wealth. When I'm talking about government, when I'm talking about politics, what I'm talking about is power. So I want us to talk a little about wealth and a little about power. I want to know something. Well, first of all, when I say those words, wealth, power, are those good or bad? Both. Yeah, I think, both, right? Because, why? Okay, depends on how you use it. Power, if I'm walking down an alley at night, a dark alley, and a powerful person with a gun shows up, is that good or bad for me? It depends on the person, right? I mean, maybe someone is there to protect me. Or maybe someone who's there to hurt me. So what about wealth? Isn't wealth evil? No. What?
My name is Francis Baker, also high school. Wealth can be good
For example.
Well, wealth can be used to smuggle the drugs into the country. Wealth can also be used to build facilities the society.
Okay, yeah, and in fact, let's talk just a little bit about power, right? And when we talk about power, well, I guess here's what I want to know. I want to know where these things come from and how they're distributed, or who uses them, or how they're used. And so, let me ask about power. Where's power come from? And I understand your rules. I'm happy if you just shout out an answer, but if we do it all at once, I can't hear. But yeah, where's power come from?
Within.
Okay, go ahead. Okay, determination. All right, she says okay. The influence you have on people, yeah. Pardon?
From yourself.
From yourself? Okay, yeah. I'm having trouble hearing you. Okay, he says mainly from wealth, and certainly there is a relationship there, right? Let's before we haven't determined yet what we mean by wealth and what we mean by power. But for example, Donald Trump has wealth. That gives him power, doesn't it? Hillary Clinton has power. That gives her wealth, right? Yeah, I mean, there clearly is a relationship between the two. And I want to get back to the relationship between the two. But right now, I want to think about what we mean by these things. And we had some suggestions. It's going to have something to do with you, your determination, if we just brute strength is part of it, intelligence, that agility, that sort of thing. But if we're building power, how do we build more power? And I think you sort of touched on it. I think you said influence, didn't you? No, somebody else said influence. You take credit for it. It's all right. Yeah. All right. So, yeah. What do you mean by that? Well, let me give you an example. During the Civil War, and I think it was called Andersonville, somebody correct me, the prison camp in Atlanta, in the Atlanta area. Is that right? Yeah, okay. And so prisoners of war were taken in there, placed in there, and some of them started getting together. And then when the new folks were brought in, they would go and take their belongings. Because, you don't have much in the prison camp, and there's a shortage of food. But some people would come in and they'd have stuff. And they'd take it. And so these gangs started forming. How is it that they can take the food from the new guys? I mean, you got 20 new guys here. And you got 10 of these guys who come in and take all that stuff. How's that happen? Yeah? Okay, they're more comfortable where they are. But in addition, yes.
Fear or experience.
Oh, okay, more experience. Well, yeah, but what gives them power?
The strength that they have for the numbers compared to.
Well, there are 10 of these new guys. There are 20 of these new guys, 10 of them, but yeah. And they're organized. They're organized, aren't they? How on earth was it that those Roman legions were able to defeat the various other the Greeks and all the others? How were they able to do that? Yeah. Okay. You went way beyond the beginning question I was asking, which had to do with their discipline and with the way they formed their phalanx. Right? And the way they protected the person next to them, so that the person next to them doesn't have to worry about what in football we call the blind side, because there's someone there looking out for him. And so they're disciplined, they're organized, and then as you point out, they built highways. Right? They built the Roman roads. They built barriers. When they would encamp, they would dig a trench. They would put posts in there, sharpened posts, and they were organized. They were disciplined. They worked together as a unit. Well, the same thing remains true today, doesn't it? We build a highway system. We build hospitals. We build schools. We build all of this because, at least in part, because of that organization, that discipline, that power. Okay, and that, well, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. Okay, so that's where we see that power coming from. But we've just noted that power can be used from the Roman point of view for good, right? Folks on the other side might not feel that way about it. From the new folks in the prison camp, for evil, right? As they see that power being imposed upon them. But let's talk about the good stuff. The Roman army wants to build roads or build a wall. And so they have the discipline, they have the organization, but it requires something more than that, doesn't it? It requires having the resources to do that. Let me ask another question. I'll play God for the moment. I'm not a surgeon, but I'll play God. That's a joke for the doctor's kids. Yeah. Okay. So I'll play God, and you're up here in heaven, waiting to be born. And I come to you and I say, you know, I have placed all of the new babies with the rich people. I've placed all the new babies with the middle class folks. The only spots I have left are poor families. So you're going to have to be born into a poor family. But I'll give you a choice. There's a poor family in the United States, and there's a poor family in Bangladesh. Which poor family would you like to be born into? United States. Why? Right? And pardon? Opportunities, yeah. Yeah. Resources, which is where I'm really headed. What's the difference between being a poor person in the United States and being a poor person in Bangladesh? Well, okay, yeah. Yeah, okay. That's okay, go ahead. Yeah. A poor person in the United States is much better off than a poor person in Bangladesh. A poor person in Bangladesh does not have a shelter. And worries about where to get enough food today not to starve. A poor person in the United States, and I'm going by the statistics, statistical abstract, has a place to live, has heating, has air conditioning, has a refrigerator, has a microwave, has a cell phone. Right? This is a poor person in the United States. A moderately well-off person in Bangladesh doesn't have all of that. Why is it different? Why are Americans better off than people in Bangladesh? There's more wealth. There's more wealth. There's the means to do it. You're not going to, if you're sick in Bangladesh, you aren't going to see a doctor. If you're poor, you're not going to see a doctor. There aren't doctors there to do it. My daughter was in India, right? Better off than Bangladesh. My daughter was in India and had a medical problem, and we were communicating, and this was some years ago, but we're still able to email each other. And I said, well, you told me there's a medical school in your town. Go there. She emailed back, it's a high school. That is, they would graduate from high school and be doctors. A way to solve the doctor shortage. Unfortunately, they're not trained like the doctors we're used to. Well, why not? Because they don't have the wealth to enable them to provide these things. Do you have something? Yes, yeah. And I suppose that you have 6 packages of French fries. All right? I have 6 hamburgers. Now, I like hamburgers, but 6 is a lot of hamburgers. And if I'm eating a hamburger, I'd like to eat some fries. Right? And you've got all those French fries. Pardon? Try the other outlet. We could make a deal. Okay, so I'll tell you what. I'll trade you a hamburger for a package of French fries. Okay? Oh. No deal. How about you? You'll do it? Okay, good. All right. Now, I have a package of French fries and 5 hamburgers. She has 5 packages of fries and 1 hamburger. And, I'm happier this way. than I was with 6 hamburgers. Are you happier than you are? We're both better off. We're both wealthier. We both have more value of resources because of that trade. Huh? Anybody in here have I don't know whether they even allow it anymore, have a part-time job in a McDonald's or some other fast food place? All right, there are a couple people working. I worked at A&W. You don't even know what that is, but it's another hamburger. There used to be one here in Huntsville. I used to love coming to Huntsville because I could go get the A&W root beer. But anyway, you're working at that because you want to feed other people? That's your desire in life? I want to feed other people, and therefore you volunteered to work there for free? Now, why are you working there? Because you have to, okay, but you have to why? Make money. You want the money, right? And therefore, and you know, I'm grateful for that, because then when I stop in because I want something to eat, he's there. And he'll give me something to eat in exchange for the money. I broke down late at night, actually not too far from here. It was over on the Tennessee side of the line. I'm in 65, just the other side on the Tennessee side. And I was able to call someone, a wrecker, to come and tow me in. I didn't have to hope some good soul would be wandering around and see if anybody got in trouble and then offer to help me. Right? That resource was available to me because that person wanted to make some money to feed his family, his wife, his children, send his kids to school, build a better place to live, right? Wanted to do that, and so he was available at 2 o'clock in the morning to come tow my car in, right? And it was worth it to me. And so both of us were better off. Both of us were wealthier. And the same thing happens with other things. Why is the farmer out there growing food? He's not going to eat it all. He's not going to give it away. But he can use it to trade. And by trading, by putting the resources into the hands where they're most valued, we become more wealthy. And you'll try to think of something that you might produce that people would want. You might think of a way to produce something cheaper so that people will buy yours and they get it cheaper. You might think of a way to produce it better so it does the job better. Gosh, we had one of the first televisions, and you had to sit in front of it and adjust the knobs, the horizontal and vertical. You've never heard of this, right? But you had to constantly adjust the horizontal and the vertical to keep the picture so you could actually watch it. It was black and white and real expensive. Right? And now you get television cheap, right? I mean, you can pay for one of those huge ones, but television. Our television was like that. Right? You can get one like that for, I don't know what, $50, something like that. So people found ways to produce better televisions at a lower cost because they love you and want you to be able to see more television? No, because they love their families. And they want to make the money so their families can have more, and so they produce it and you get the benefit of it. And that produces wealth. And that wealth enables us to look after people who are poor in a way that in Bangladesh they may want to do it, but even if they want to, they can't. But here we have the ability to do it. So yeah, there's something good about wealth, and wealth comes from the ability to exchange, right? So that people can have more. And wealth comes from choice, right? This is all voluntary. You notice I didn't trade with him. I got to decide. I said no. So nothing's being taken from me. I'm giving it willingly. And you're giving willingly. And if you're not willing, well, then we don't do it. So we have this voluntary exchange which gives us choices. I wish, I don't know, well, but you still probably have, what is it, orange, the motorcycle, chopper, pardon? Is that where they build the one that you want, the way you want it? Oh. Pardon? Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. Orange County chopper, yeah, orange, okay. And now think about this. You want a motorcycle that meets certain conditions. I mean, I want it to look like this, I want it to do that or something. You can get it. You can get it, you gotta pay for it, right? Depends on how much you want it, right? But you want it, you can get it. You've got the choice. And that creates the wealth. So the market is about choice, right? And it's about wealth. Power, government is about power. And power is about discipline and about uniformity. Right? About making, and it's about force. It's about making people do things. Right? Is that bad? I didn't think so when I was driving down the interstate and there was no traffic coming directly at me in my lane. Right? Why not? Because we got folks out there with pistols on their hips, right? And fast cars and blue lights, and if somebody's driving the wrong way, they're going to pull them over. Right? If somebody's driving too fast, I mean, they give you some latitude, but if you're driving too fast, they'll pull. If you're driving recklessly, if you're driving under the influence, right? We're using that power. Now, those gangs in the prison were using that power too, right? And we didn't like the way they used it. But we do like power being used in the right way to protect us, right? And about that trade. I mean, he was about to jump up and take my hamburgers by force. But we want a government, we want power that'll stop that. They'll say, no, you can't do that. If that doesn't happen, well, let me tell you another story. I grew corn. It was in my backyard, and the house was close to a railroad right-of-way, but off it, and behind our property there was an open field. But there at the edge of our property, I planted corn. And that corn started coming out. I weeded, I watered, and that corn is growing up. And it's just about ready to pick. And I go out there, and the raccoons have stripped it all. There was one crummy little ear that had maybe 5 or 6 kernels on it. Other than that, they had taken it all. So next year, what didn't I do? I didn't plant corn. I mean, I could have tried putting up a fence and blah, but it wasn't worth it to me. I didn't grow the corn. Why didn't I grow the corn? Because it was all taken away. Why am I going to do all that work if I can't get the reward? I'd have been willing to give them a little bit, right? But they took it all. Well, there's a lesson in there, isn't there, about the relationship between the production of wealth and power. Right? They had the power to take it. They didn't get it the next year because I didn't grow it. Right? But the same thing's true with the power that we have, right? The power that we put together, right? There's a relationship between that power of government and that market. We want the power to protect the market so we can do the trades. But we don't want the power to take it all. But it's a little hard to draw that balance, isn't it? Because we'd like the interstate. How many are willing to donate $1,000 to help build the interstate? We're going to have to tax to get it, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're going to have to use that power. And so, when in 1787, some of us remember, right? 1787. There's a constitutional convention. Why? 1776, the revolution. A little hard to know exactly when it ends, depends on how you define the end, but let's say 1782, the revolution's over. And we have a government under the Articles of Confederation where the states volunteer to work together. And they volunteer to pay taxes, but they don't do it. Or at least they don't pay what they're supposed to pay. And they also put up barriers to trade. And trade creates wealth. Yeah. Okay. And so Alexander Hamilton comes to George Washington and says, look, we got to do something about this. George Washington gets on board. Some other folks get on board. They call a constitutional convention. And they're doing this to accomplish two purposes. Principally. There are some others, but principally two purposes. One is mutual defense. Because the most powerful nation in the world is still just above their northern border, right? England. And they're in Canada. And you still have the French messing around in the West. And you have the Spanish down there to the south. And so we need some way to have mutual defense. And that's going to require, that's power, right? We need some way to enhance the power. And then the other thing is we need to enhance the wealth because that power can't be fully utilized if we don't have the wealth. And so commerce, to protect commerce. And so the commerce power is given to the federal Congress. Okay, so wealth and power, and they draft this Constitution. Now, how am I assume from this movement I'm about out of time. Oh, I got a little bit of time. Okay. So, okay, let's see where I am. Okay. Well, let me give you the short version of 1 Samuel chapter 8. Now, this is not a New Testament. I know it looks like it. This is an entire Bible, which means if I don't have real good light, there's no way I can read it. But I know this well enough that I think I can talk about it. Okay, so 1 Samuel chapter 8, and in 1 Samuel chapter 8, Samuel's the judge, and that's someone God has anointed to be a leader. And the people are, Samuel's getting old, and so the people want a king. They want a king. If we look toward the end of it to verse 20, we'll see what it was they wanted the king for. It says that we also may be like the other nations, and that our king may judge us, as give us justice, and go out before us and fight our battles. So they want a king to fight their battles, and they want a king to give them justice. And so they ask Samuel for that. Samuel feels rejected. He goes to God. He says, this is what they're asking for. God says, tell them what they'll get. And then if they still want it, give it to them. And so he tells them what they'll get. He repeats what the Lord has told him. This will be the manner of the king that shall reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them for himself, for his chariots, and to be his horsemen. And some shall run before his chariots. And he'll appoint some captains and so on and so forth. And he will take your daughters to be confectioners and to be cooks and to be bakers. And he will take your fields and your vineyards and your olive yards and so on and so forth. And he'll take a tenth part of everything that you produce. And he'll take your servants, meaning slaves. I mean, that King James translates it servants, because they didn't have slaves in England, but the Hebrew word is slaves. Anyway, and he'll do all of this, and, let's see here, and ye shall cry out in that day because of your king, which ye shall have chosen, and the Lord will not hear you. Let's see here, where's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, and you shall be his slaves. Okay, so that's what the Lord tells them. And if you keep reading the Bible, you'll discover it happened. Right? They were drafted into service essentially as slaves. So what do we see back there in the Old Testament? We see this power being given, this power being concentrated, and as a result, the government you planned on serving you, right? Government, I want you to go out and fight for me. How does the government go out and fight for you? He drafts you into the military, right? And he sends you over to fight. There is no such thing as government, right? I mean, it's an organization. And it's the people who are going to supply the materials, supply the food, supply the soldiers, and the support and all of that. And that's what's being pointed out here. Well, when our Constitution was drafted, they knew about this. And they'd seen similar developments in the Renaissance period. They saw them in ancient Greece. They'd seen similar developments. So the concern is, we want a government that's powerful enough to protect us, but we don't want to end up being the government's slave. We want a government that will protect our commerce so that we can be wealthy. We don't want a government that's going to take it all and kill it, right? Which is ultimately what happens. And so how do we do that? The answer is to draft a constitution that separates powers, that separates and balances powers. So that you'll notice Article 1 is about the legislative branch. Article 2 is about the executive branch. Article 3 is about the judicial branch, because they're separating and balancing these powers. Right? And they made the federal government a government of limited powers. And you'll notice that by and large, those are in Article 1, Section 8, the power to borrow money, to tax, to regulate commerce, to do these various things. So there are limited powers that the government has. Okay. So that's the way the government's set up to have power that is sufficient to protect the creation of wealth so that we can all be better off, and that is powerful enough to protect us from external enemies. But the effort is to limit that power. Now, Madison called this parchment barriers, a wall of paper. Well, a wall of paper isn't going to be much protection, is it? What makes this meaningful? What makes it meaningful is if we take it seriously, and if we hold people's feet to the fire. Davy Crockett, you've heard of Davy Crockett, right? Yeah. Well, what you may not know is basically he was a politician. I mean, we heard about him at the Alamo and fighting at the Alamo and dying at the Alamo. We heard about him killing a bear when he was only 3, if you're my age, because that was the song for the television program. And he killed a lot of bears, working his way through Tennessee. But he was basically a politician. and he was in the House of Representatives. And it was time to run for re-election. And so he was walking through his district. And there's a farmer out there in his field, a yeoman farmer, you know, an individual farmer with a small plot of land. He's growing his crops. And Davy Crockett greets him. Now, I can picture this. It's not described, but I can picture it because I had to run for office. And I picture, you know, one of those rail fences, and the guy's plowing behind his mule, and Davy Crockett comes up there and puts his foot up there on that rail fence and waits for the guy to come over by the fence. And the guy gets there and he says, "Hello, I'm Davy Crockett." Actually, he would have said David Crockett. He never called himself Davy. He said, "Oh, I'm David Crockett. I'm your congressman. And I'm up for re-election, and I'd appreciate your vote." Well, we do know what the farmer said. He said, "I can't do that." David Crockett asked him why. He said, "Well, you remember, this is New Days, Washington, D.C., just building up Washington, D.C., big fire, burned down a whole row of houses. And Congress had voted to appropriate money to rebuild those houses, to help Washington, D.C. Grow." And he said, "Well, you remember, those houses burned down, and you appropriated tax money to rebuild those private homes." The farmer said, "I don't believe that's within the power the Constitution gives federal government." Now, we can agree or disagree with that conclusion. That's not my point. The point is, the fellow said, "You've acted unconstitutionally, so I'm going to vote you out." Two remarkable things here, I think. One is, he knew how his congressman voted. Right? We're talking the 1830s here. He knew how his congressman voted. The second thing is, this farmer had a theory of the Constitution. He'd read it. He took it seriously. And he was going to hold his congressman's feet to the fire. You didn't follow the Constitution as I understand it. Now, we've had this era when we think, well, the Constitution's business is the Supreme Court. I don't know anything about it. They're the experts. No, it's not written for the Supreme Court. It's written for you, so that you can hold the Supreme Court's feet to their fire. So that you can hold the president's feet to the fire. So you can hold the congressman and senator's feet to the fire. It's written for you. During that, the Texas insurrection, you know, from Mexico, when Texas declared its independence from Mexico, shortly before that, the governor, who was Mexican, right? The governor of Texas wrote a letter back to the president of Texas complaining about those Americans who, you know, from Tennessee and Alabama and places like that who'd gone to Texas, walking around with their copies of the Constitution in their pockets demanding their rights. Right? They carried copies of the Constitution with them. And they tried to hold Mexico to it. Well, we got some problems with that, right? But because, you know, this is written for the American government, but still, they were serious about it. They read the Constitution, they took the Constitution seriously, they believed that it was their job to enforce the Constitution. That's what protects us. Not the paper, but what we do because of what's on the paper. Right? That's your job. And you can do it. You can run for office, right? You can help someone else run for office. You can pick out people who you think should be in office. You can pick out people you think shouldn't be in office, and you can work at it in order to uphold the Constitution. But of course, that requires that you have some theory as to what the Constitution's about. And that requires reading, right? And that requires study, and that requires thought. And then to make that make a difference, it requires work. It requires getting out there and doing something about it. Okay, well, that's what I got to say. I appreciate this chance to say it to you. Thank you.